I am recording. The meeting is starting at 7:35. We do not have a quorum. Hopefully we'll have one before the meeting is over. So we'll skip to the agenda items. We're one member less. Which is unfortunate. I thought she was a productive member, and sorry to see her go. Approval of minutes we have to put off. I just note that the agenda was changed because Alex Kipp could not be here tonight, so I invited him to the May meeting. Okay, skipping the agenda, skipping the minutes at the moment. We have this article, which I did not update, even though Steve sent me an update. The issue is still the same. Community Board 5 is having its problems. I'm really impressed by this article. What did it appear, the article?
It may have been City and State or Cranes.
I thought it was Cranes.
Cranes, yeah.
Really impressed how Cranes took the work of the board as seriously as it did, the importance of what it does. But the fact is, it's kind of distressing that the meeting, the board has been set up so that there is no, that members felt the need, according to the chair, to resign rather than work together. What I find fascinating by this, community board members are nominated, okay, open. With the 4 members of CB5 persuaded 19 others last week to join in electing Lavinia as chairman, with 19 abstaining. 11 votes are that close. With abstentions. Obviously, this board has a problem, and I hope we don't find ourselves ever in that kind of situation. Of course, one has to wonder what the borough president's role has been in appointing these people. In an article I saw the other day and decided to share, which I find fascinating, if I am correct. CEC, the Education Council of District 14 in Brooklyn, apparently has been having its problems for a while. And as I recall, they do not meet in person. This article doesn't apply it at all. But as I recall, they meet only on Zoom because the leadership of the board is fearful of being in public. And so the issue here is that based on regulation D210, for which the Department of Ed policy has been used to suppress, regulation claims it permits the investigation and removal of CEC members for speech deemed offensive or disrespectful. Now, I don't know how one defines offensive and disrespectful, but these 3 women who are suing are saying they're never allowed to speak because they are not towing the line. They have a difference of opinion. And so the meeting would appear to be everyone agrees, and those who have a comment in opposition are denied access. Again, I believe this is all over Zoom. It says they're removed, but it doesn't say they're physically taken out. My presumption is they're turned off or never given the opportunity to speak. There are 2 issues that Julie has asked me to raise. I see Julie is not on at the moment. So
She's on.
She's on. Yeah. Okay. The issue at hand, and I created this issue, so I want to give you a little bit of background, and then we'll move forward from her question. In the beginning, I was the chair of the board who created the idea of the Community Service Award. It was anticipated by me at the time to be an award given by the board for members of the community who performed outstanding service and should be recognized in one form or another. The process was, a committee was set up. I appointed Joyce Pilsner as the first chair of that committee. When she became my successor, she returned the favor and appointed me as the second chairperson of that committee. And so we went through the application nominations and brought our selections to the executive committee and said, we recommend X, Y, Z, or just X or whatever to be the nominees. And the executive committee they don't vote, so it isn't that they approved, no one over the dissent. And so it moved forward to the board, and the person was persons recognized at a board meeting. A couple of times I arranged for a reception, so it became a board event. What has happened of late, and I complained of late, is that the executive and the board itself do not know who the honorees are until the award is presented by the committee chairperson. So it's not, in my mind, it's no longer a board award, it's a committee award, and shouldn't have the same value. And so I've asked that, I raised 2 months ago at an executive meeting, that this process be reviewed if we're going to have a board award or a community award. We now have a committee award. We now have 4 awards, started off with community service, renamed for the Irving Latimer. We have a Merchant of the Year award. We have a Comeback Kid award. We have I'm missing one.
Count Yankee, but I don't understand why that's in there.
I consider separate. It's not our award.
That's right.
It's given by the Yankees.
That's right.
The other one is just created by Sergio, which is a Veterans Award. I have no idea what that is, quite frankly. So what Julie is asking is, do we have a recommendation, suggestion on how these awards should be offered? If we agree that I am out of my league and should not have raised this in the first place, then I'll drop it. But we believe there should be a process, and that's the question I'm raising here right now. Any thoughts?
Yes. No committee should have the authority to give out awards. That is, an award, it to have any meaning, to have any substance, to have any rule of the community board behind it, it has to be the community board giving the award. It's the only thing that makes sense, and that's what we did. The community board, at the community board meeting, gave the service award, and then when it came to the merchant one, it was done at the board. The board does it. The committee can do research, the committee can interview, the committee can do whatever they want to do. The name should come to exec, and then it's a board award. That's it. The Yankee is different because we do not have any authority whatsoever in who gets that award. It's the Yankees who do it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say, oh, you want to throw some names in? That's fine with us. We'll entertain. That's okay. But they're the decision maker. We're not the decision maker. And to be nice, we like to do it at a board meeting. These kids got it. It's very nice. They get a lot of money. But it is a considerable amount of money. So it's kind of nice to memorialize at a board meeting, but we have no authority to grant that. So, again, committees should not have the authority to give out awards. That is not what committees, they shouldn't be empowered to do that. It's the board that's empowered to give out an award. So committees can interview, can do this, or that, can make recommendations, they should come to exec, and the board approves. It's, to me, it's that simple. I don't see anything else to talk about.
So I'm curious, as a point of information, I can't recall that the board actually voted. I do understand the committee did the research, made the recommendation, and sometimes it was a special committee, and sometimes it was just like allocated to particular committees. Was there, obviously there was no discussion, there were no other nominations for the recipient of the award at the board meeting.
Correct.
Was there literally a vote?
No, there wasn't, but it's clear the board is giving the award.
That was why I asked the question.
Marty, maybe, before I was on, maybe there were actual votes at the board. I don't remember that, but it is clear it is the board that is doing the honoring.
By the time it came to the board, there was no board vote. What was done, I'll call you in a second, David. What happened this month, hoping we were handling this better, when we first began this, there was no pressure from the open meetings law. And therefore, in a private, in-camera meeting, there was a discussion of nominees, yes or no, and that came back to the executive, mentioning names. Under the OML, this is now a public thing, and we certainly don't want to announce a name and someone not be turned down for whatever reason on any level. So the issue was and the same thing was done when we hired our district manager, and even when we had contests. When I ran the contest under the libraries committee, the essay contest, we labeled the applicant with a letter, and so the people in the committee didn't know who they were talking about. They only know what they were talking about. But the committee, what happened to the executive last week is that at the meeting, we were advised that A, B, and C were the suggestions for the Community Service Award. That if anyone here knows what A, B, and C means, we were not so informed. We were just given letters. That certainly was not the intent.
But let me just interrupt one to make the story full, because I think maybe I started asking the question. We were presented at exec with a draft resolution. And the resolution says, whereas a candidate number one, whereas it did wonderful, candidate number two did, so it was a resolution. My question was, is this resolution coming to the board? If so, what are the names going to go in? That's the question I asked. And I think that's what kicked off.
Oh, but
just
there's actual information.
Resolution put, no,
Forget about the name. Was there information saying?
You had the resolution?
I don't recall seeing it.
Because the way it was explained to me was that people had no information, and so the exec actually was playing no substantive role.
When you see it, I think you'll see it's, there are words, but it's thin. Okay, okay.
The issue is to bring it back to the, where are we, April, the May exec meeting, where we will receive copies of the nominations redacted, only given a letter, but we will see why the person was nominated.
I don't get it.
So I think I've explained once when I heard about this that my view is that I'm sympathetic, and I think it's sensitive to the idea that you don't want, since everything is now a public meeting in a way that honestly they were not in the sense of being attended before 8 or so years ago. I understand the sensitivity about someone coming with a recommendation to get the award and then being turned down for whatever reason that comes up at exec. It could be embarrassing. So I do agree with letter or number designations for purposes of preserving the anonymity of the person. However, I think that the executive committee should know not just all of the information about the nominees, the various nominees, but if that's what the committee needs to report out, or the one nominee, and the name should not be obscured either. However, for purposes of preserving the sensitivity or avoiding embarrassment, I do agree that at the meeting, the exec members can discuss the person or the people by numbers or letters in order to avoid public disclosure in that way without the need to go into executive session. But I think that having the names is very important because people understand what different people do in the community. The people on exec are the leaders of the board, and they should be able to bring to bear their experience, not just with particular organizations, but with the people themselves.
Correct. The people and the work that is, and when I use the word alleged, I don't mean anything by that, is claimed that is the activity that puts them in a position to be granted. Okay, well, many of us are aware of different works in the community and certainly can vouch for or question what that is. Now, just one last thing I didn't raise my hand, I'm sorry, Marty. It is not a subject that I believe is amenable to executive session in the open meetings law. Read the open meetings law. There is no exception for this, none. So I don't think you can go into executive session to talk about these names.
I didn't think it would be appropriate, but I think
Okay,
I think there's wiggle room for the
Okay.
It was right. I mean, I've seen it presented in that way too.
Mm-hmm.
I think wiggle room to use numbers or letters is, I think, in spirit.
David?
With the open meetings.
So you'll see that's the information I have, okay?
David, go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry. I've turned off my camera because I'm getting a message that my internet connection is weak, so trying to save bits, I guess, of transmission. Anyway, I'm trying to understand this process because, one, when you say it's coming from the committee, you're talking about the award nomination committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but the statement that it goes before exec and we send it on, what exactly is exec's role in this?
Good question.
Because I don't know that we have any authority.
To take a look.
Same as it does in all other cases. It vets it.
And to
to
make
find whether or
comment
not
to,
The executive committee
I'm
vets
sorry.
it
Could you
to find out whether or
that?
not there's something they know about the honoree, potential honoree, that should be known by everyone else.
So if I could just jump in, David, I think that now that I'm thinking about it, in line with what exec does with regard to other committee resolutions generally, exec doesn't redo the discussion and the deliberation. They look at the
Correct.
conclusion of the committee and they bless it. It's an opportunity, that one last safety valve before it goes to the board.
Correct.
So I think it will be that what will be reported out by, for example, if it's the Economic Development Committee is the one that recommends the merchant, or the special committee for the community service, they will, the exec will see the name, but for purposes of the discussion, hopefully they'll agree to not, you don't need letters and numbers at that point. They'll just won't mention the name and they'll just deliberate as best they can and, or not, and just bless it. And I think that would be true certainly of those two awards and possibly the Veterans Award.
Or the opinion.
Right, so exec would merely make comments, yet exec would make comments, yet the decision to bring it forward would still come from the respective committees, regardless of what members of exec say.
Unless the exec provides logic why such a person ought not be so named. But I think we're agreed at this point that in May, when it comes back before the exec, it should be the full application.
Right, exec is not substituting its judgment, David. It seems that what exec is doing is being that last opportunity to point out something that could embarrass the board if something wasn't known. And there are situations in which a resolution might be held up, with agreement of the chair or the vice chair, even though a committee reported it out, if there's some irregularity. But it would be, the expectation would be that exec would be blessing the recommendation. Is that
And-
fair,
and it's
David?
Yeah, and it's just advisory.
No different than in any time a resolution has reported at a committee and goes in front of
Yeah,
exec.
that's really my point, because there have been very few, but there have been a couple of cases where, you know, there was debate as to whether a resolution should come out of a committee, and, you know, comments were made, but ultimately it was up to the chair of that committee to bring it before the board. And I believe that would hold true here. And that is to say
I think
that,
that's a separate subject, David. It seems like, looking at Rosemary shaking her head, seems like there's more nuance involved there. And the exec has a function, not merely to chat, and that they can stand in the way. They can suggest that something be held over for further fact-finding or discussion. And so ultimately, exec, sounds like exec can really, with obviously on the chair, including the chair of the board, can actually, you know, essentially interrupt a committee's wishes, at least for a month.
all right, see, that's what I'm questioning.
All I'm looking for and have looked for was the question that the imprimatur of the exec indicates that it's a board award, not a committee award.
Yes, correct.
And I think we'll cross that bridge, if we have to. If someone says that person's a felon, we would not honor him, or. So I think
Or, you know, for instance, in the Irving Latimer one, one of the very strict things is you can't be paid for that job. So
Right.
if it comes across and is presented and the committee looks at, oh, fine work, this is great, but it's clear to one member or more members, I'm sorry, that's a paid job. That's exactly the kind of thing that you want that check.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay, then I think we can go past this one. On the second question from Julie, which may be a non-question because of timing, but her concern is valid. Under hybrid procedures, if you so select and ask, you can become EC. In the last executive board meeting, 3 of us who are chairs, for whatever our reasons, I know my reason, decided at the last minute, there's no way I could attend that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, it was safety and the wind. I didn't believe I was capable of fighting the wind. So I didn't ask for EC, but I attended the meeting, and when appropriate, apparently each of the 3 of us gave reports from our committee. What Julie is concerned about is this seems to be technically a violation of the intent of EC. Each of us were absent for the meeting. Each of us gave a report. So she wants to know whether or not we ought to come up with an alternate or some kind of wording that would permit for this or not permit for this. I say the timing is strange because July 1st, the AOL as we currently know it will not exist, or that section which concerns hybrid will not exist or be revised. So the question is, do we want to create a condition factor for this kind of situation, which may happen again, or just hold our breath until July 1st?
I think it's an excellent question that gets raised, because the last executive committee meeting would give concern to any member of the board who sat through it. There was no quorum for the executive committee. 9 people were absent and 9 were up on the screen. So why bother coming when you can give your report and talk and ask questions and debate and participate up on the screen? Why bother coming? You can see it. I bet you if you went over the past year, you will see a deterioration in attendance at most meetings. I believe you will see that. And the last exec, I thought was frightening. 9 people were up on the screen. Why bother coming? Why? So I would, let me go out on a limb and say, this is, if we didn't have this stupid EC thing, this EC thing, what would happen if you cannot make it to the meeting as a chair? You gotta take care of yourself. Oh my God, do we have tea for him? Is there tea? Would you like a cup? You don't have tea for that? With hot water, anything?
It's a good use for OTPS.
I can't buy food. Okay. If a committee chair cannot attend exec, we set that out it's the way the rule always was. That chair asked their vice chair, please come and attend. I am not able to make the meeting. I'm not going to be there. Please come to exec and give the resolutions and the report from the X committee. That's what should be, not from up there.
You know, I was thinking along the lines that Marty had diverted to and that you mentioned, Rosemary, that if there were no EC, we wouldn't have this problem. I don't think that's completely true, and I'm not suggesting we need a resolution, although I think out of respect for the chair of the board, if we can come to some consensus here, including, you know, informally with Sylvia EC and David non-EC, a little guidance wouldn't be a bad thing. The reason I don't think the issue goes away is that if EC goes away, either because it's not renewed as an option or because the board chooses not to make use of it, I believe we will continue to have video conferencing as a part of many of our meetings. And I think that a lot of people think video conferencing, because of possible additional involvement of the community, is possibly a net benefit. So if we have that, you can still have a situation where exec is attended in person by less than a quorum or even more than a quorum, but you still have a number of chairs who are not in person. And let's say they have not, and this is a mistake on their part, they have not had the foresight to ask that their vice chair, if they have one, come to the meeting. So now you're faced with a situation where you have 5 chairs or 3 chairs up on video conference, not at the meeting. There's no question they have no ability to vote. However, I think probably, unless it is an interruption to the business of the meeting, they probably can participate. They certainly can listen. And then the question becomes, can they take the step of giving a committee report, whatever normally flies, at exec? Or should they, because they failed to designate someone to be in person, should they have to, you know, essentially be mute? And now the board chair and the other chairs who sit on exec are deprived of the current events. So my view would be it's a practical decision that the chair of the meeting should make about whether that information should be communicated in that way, although I do think it should be very clearly established that the preferred course of action and the mandatory course of action is, if you can't be there, make sure someone's there in your stead authorized to report.
Apologize.
Speaking for myself, it wasn't until 4 or 5 o'clock. I said, there's no way I can make that meeting.
No, but whatever it is, the fact is, it's going to be a part of reality as it was last time before COVID, except there was no video conferencing. So there it was very clean, very cut and dry. If there was no vice chair, there was no report.
I will, let me also add, there have been many executive sessions where there is neither a chair or a vice chair for committees. There is no report. There's nothing from that committee.
I understand.
Okay? Not there, absent, AWOL, not there.
Right.
Okay, so that happens, and actually, we should be turning our attention to that rather than what is the percentage possibility of a Marty at 5 o'clock, I can't make it. That's less of a possibility than what we have experienced. Nobody shows up, no chair and no vice chair. That's troublesome.
Well, we would want to see if things turn around, if we adopt an in-person rule again.
David?
Promoting.
Yes. Marty, Steve said essentially what I was going to say. I think we've always given the chair of any committee, be it exec or a operating committee, that discretion. I think we should continue to give the chair that discretion.
It should handle the issue, it should handle.
That's what I would tell Julie. I think that we think it should be in the chair of the meeting's discretion. In the case of exec, that's normally going to be the chair of the board.
So at this moment, you have no recommendation for any change, and we'll wait for July 9th, July 1st.
There still is, many meetings ago, this committee unanimously want to see EC done away with in
Right.
May, in a resolution in May.
That's the next issue, yes.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Excuse me,
You said
can I
wait till
speak?
July, I got,
What?
Sylvia.
I have my hand up.
Okay.
May I
see
have
it
an
now,
opinion?
I see it now, go.
Okay. As far as this issue is concerned, it has become, I know that I complained a long time ago about this whole situation with EC, but it has gotten, as Rosemary said, to such an extent that there is no rhyme or reason for anything. Just because Julie has brought this up now, I think my feeling is that if someone has not notified the office that you need an EC, most of us have, by the time that the executive board meets, has given their minutes in. So the report that they will ultimately give is probably duplicated by their minutes. I don't think that that is an issue. I don't see any reason why someone, like we did before the pandemic, if you can't come, then you're just not there. If you have a vice chair, that's fine. But to make extra regulations now, again, at a time when it is being abused more and more, we all have no quorums at our meetings. Everything is more difficult for the committee chairs, and yet you're talking about making it easier for people to do it at the last minute and make a report, even though they're absent. So I think that we're going really down the wrong road.
Okay, so our conclusion at this moment is we're not gonna do anything, make no recommendation, and I wanna jump.
I think we can tell, I mean, again, as I said, out of respect for the request by the chair, I think it's fair to say that the sense of the committee is that this is covered by the discretion of the chair of whatever meeting it is to determine what information is appropriate to elicit, whether it be via video conference or in person. We don't need a special rule for it, but obviously, you know, whether EC continues or not, you know, could have an impact on how often the situation presents itself.
But
I think
Steve,
that's what,
can I add something on that?
Yeah.
My experience, especially lately, has been that the chair of the board, as much as I love Julie, has given EC for every reason under the sun. Things that we never put in our procedures at all. And that giving in on this one is the same kind of thing. We have to
Yeah,
take
the
a
only thing-
stand sometime.
no, I think the LRE is taking a stand on, and Marty's going to get to this as the next agenda item. I think LRE has been pretty clear about its recommendation with regard to EC. But the point here, Sylvia, is that even if EC were gone, a committee chair could still be presented with a situation in which a person did not, could not, would not attend the meeting in person, and nevertheless, they happen to be, because of video conferencing, available. And it may be that the chair of that committee, believes that that's an essential piece of information, and the rest of the committee would waste time if they didn't have an essential piece of information. And so all we're saying is that EC or no EC, the chair should have the discretion about whether or not to elicit information from a person who's remote, whether that person is under the EC regime or not EC, or EC is gone, but video conferencing is likely to continue, irrespective of EC. So regardless of abuse of EC or being too easy about it and all that, this situation could still present itself, Sylvia.
But the thing though is, you don't think that the minutes cover what the chair would say on Zoom?
You're
It
probably
should.
right, You're probably right 9 times out of 10, but the chair might also have your minutes from the education committee, but the chair and the rest of exec might not know that between the time you filed your minutes and the time of exec, you were notified by the school construction authority that they wanted to come, but they couldn't get to your next meeting, and could there be a general meeting scheduled or something like that? That would be pretty important information, right? To communicate. Maybe you could do it by phone beforehand, maybe not, but it would be good for the chair to have that discretion, because the minutes are not going to always cover it, and sometimes people are going to be late with the minutes. It's just, again, you can't plan for everything.
Julie?
I don't agree.
Julie?
She's you got to ask to unmute. Julie, unmute yourself. Yes, she's unmuted now. Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I think Steve covered it, what I was going to say. Basically, my question to the committee, the example that happened at the exec that we just had, we had chairs at the meeting who, some had ECs, some did not. And I've always been told that the exec, only executive members can speak, give a report. So that if you have a chair at the meeting without an EC, according to our rules, they are a guest. So is their report legitimate enough to be in the minutes? If they're not an executive member, how can they report at the meeting? That is my question. Because like Steve said, there are some issues that do come up between their minutes and the night of the meeting. Personally, if an exec, if a chairperson is at the meeting and they have information, I would like to hear them speak. It's not my rules, it's the board's rules. And I do give EC to people when requested, because there is that little loophole in the hybrid rules that gives someone a discretion to give someone EC. So until the EC is gone, or until that little loophole is fit, I'm not going to be the judge and jury why someone cannot come to a meeting. But I do know that I have to follow the rules. Sylvia told me that I couldn't give you your approval because it was after 12 noon the day of the meeting. It's all technicalities. I go by technicalities on what's written in the rules. And I was a little perplexed at the last exec with so many chairs, and I want to hear from them. But can we put their report in the minutes if I was told this meeting was already in exec, unless you're exec and unless you're president, you cannot speak. So that's why I put in the request for your committee to look into.
I see 3 more people want to speak, 2 more want to speak, but I think this is resolved already. So we're not going to change anything at the moment. We'll hang into July 1st, and just speaking for myself, at 4 o'clock, I funked out. My reason for participating was because I wanted to remind everyone about the need for them to respond, which I have not done yet, on the question of what if giving them input into extraordinary circumstances. I still have not heard from executive committee members. So my intent on being heard didn't resolve anything. Sylvia, I'll give you a chance to Close out and then Steve.
I just want to give an example of what happened to me this week. I knew I was not going to be able to be at the exec. I spoke to Farah to present my resolutions. Unfortunately, Emily Porter on it, but I had not spoken to Emily. There is no reason why a chair has to, if caught in that kind of situation, do they have to do it themselves? They could instruct someone of the office to do it, the chair. It doesn't have to be stretched this way. I think it's wrong.
Steve?
Just wanted to very briefly respond to Julie's question or comment, and that is that I think you need special authorization to permit someone to provide information if in the chair's discretion they want to elicit that from a person who's attending as a guest or a person who's attending as a member who's not in person or does or doesn't have EC. That's very different than the person accounting for a quorum. I think there you would have to make some sort of rule change or statute change. I think it's very different than a person voting. I think as long as it's information, I really think it doesn't require special authorization, Julie, for a chair to recognize someone. Notwithstanding that everyone agrees, it is far, far better and will be the norm for someone to designate the vice chair to attend and report, or as Sylvia said, late-breaking information, you can't be there, you make sure the information gets to the DM or the board chair, and it's shared with exec.
Exactly. We're saying there's an expectation of a procedure. And we expect that to be followed. Of course, there can be a situation where it can't be. That's where you don't want to tie yourself into a straitjacket, and the chair of the board certainly has the authority to say, I want to hear from you. For all you go through as chair of the board, you deserve that little bit of grace there. But I do think it's important to say the expectation. We have an expectation that you will be here. Otherwise, that last meeting, 9 up on the screen and 9 in the room, it left me very, very uneasy. It certainly is not something I think anybody wants to see.
Well, then we have to get rid of the hybrid. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Speaking of which, the next item is the letter over Steve and my names that went out advising the entire Board of Community that we are recommending elimination of EC. There is one error in the letter. Actually, it's twice. I said we voted unanimously to recommend. The fact is, there was one abstention, and that was Chuck, because Chuck, though he's not here, Chuck is concerned that his situation will make it difficult on many occasions for him to attend. Is there anyone who has any comments relative to the letter, the rather extensive letter? I just wanted you to note that I sent out an email to Jeff Dinowitz asking him if he has a heads up where he thinks the legislature is going. I think it would be helpful if we knew in advance. Just to remind you, in May, we are going to vote to extend the concept. I presume we're going to vote to extend the concept of telecommunications, which will allow the public to participate, elected officials to participate, and how board members may or may not participate. We'll discuss that. But the idea is to extend the use of telecommunications. The issue of whether or not we extend the procedures is one which probably should come up in May also, although I think we should hold off on anything until we hear back either from Jeff or from the legislature. For us to bend over backwards to change the rules when the rules are no longer relevant, would seem to be a little silly on our part. So that's my recommendation.
Just to play that out, Marty, let's assume, and let's keep these separate. If the board votes as it did last spring, without a new resolution, but simply a vote to continue the sense of the resolution from 2 years ago, that the board would participate in video conferencing, or if you want to call it hybrid meetings. Let's say that is going to happen, or at least it'll be presented to the board for that vote,
For a vote. Mm-hmm.
and that will be in May. If we don't take action because there is no heads up from our assembly person, and, you know, over the summer, it turns out that everything's renewed, presumably, this would then be the recommendation of LRE next September, and at the September board meeting, which I guess, if, depending on the holidays, could be pretty early in the month, you might have EC for 14 days and then not, if the board votes to just get rid of those procedures, right?
I'm very confused. I thought it was crystal clear a number of meetings ago that it was a unanimous decision, I forgot about Chuck, unanimous decision that EC would be gone by resolution in May. There'd be a resolution in front of the board to eliminate EC. Am I still, has something changed that, no?
We didn't know 3 months ago, because we hadn't read it, I hadn't read it carefully, that there was a sunset provision in the law covering everything, not just the EC procedures, but video conferencing itself. And so I guess Marty's feeling like, why are we taking action, having a discussion, if all this may be gone anyway? That's
Because
the only
it may not be
suggestion,
gone.
because it may not be gone.
And we made a decision. We made a decision. Unless this committee wants to change what their vote was that day, we made a decision.
I have no objection to going forward, and, you know, and we couldn't list any more reasons and rationale for this. It's really a question of just a simple resolution, I guess.
Well, just note that I did hear back from David, who made some comments, and I sent it out to you, about how it was set up. I did receive, and you have my response to David. I did get a response from Paul Bender, which is right there. And I did get a response from Sergio, who just gave me a one sentence. He's strongly in favor. Everyone else seems to be against it. So my sense is the board doesn't feel strongly enough about it to have entered an opinion. And so
Marty?
I'm disturbed by that, but I will do another survey of the minutes to see how it's been used or not used.
Marty?
I'll come back. Sylvia? Sylvia, you're unmuted, you can speak.
I
think
think
she may
Sylvia
not-
and Julie left their
She just
hands
didn't take
up.
her hand down.
No,
before.
I don't know how to lower my hand. I don't have
Okay.
my mouse with me, so I'm not having any success.
Marty, my hand is up, though.
David?
Yeah, two things. One, I thought that we said, yes, we want to recommend no more EC, but we weren't going to present it until we knew what was going to happen with the states and mayor's rules on extension. That aside, the other thing that we probably don't need to do tonight, but probably should think about is how do we define ADA-like issues for individuals who cannot, who we believe cannot make it to meetings, and we want to have some flexibility for them. I mean, is it because you can't leave home, or you're in a wheelchair, or you're in crutches, or you twisted your ankle this afternoon? We do need to define that some way, somehow, though not necessarily tonight.
Marty,
Okay, I just wanna,
I apologize.
I wanna jump for a moment, if you will. I know that Rosemary had an issue. She believes he took a position, and I'll move forward on that position and have the vote and the discussion in May. And I wanna make sure we recognize, but I put down here three, and if you looked at it, 3 reasons why perhaps we ought to continue EC under limited circumstances. Continuing medical or home condition that makes attendance medically or personally impossible. Unique weather conditions. I'm guilty on that. And persons with handicapping conditions, which I think is required under ADA.
My view is that you either have EC or you don't, and you don't have to make special rules for the Americans with Disabilities Act or its New York City Human Rights Commission counterpart. All agencies are bound by that, and I think it needs an opportunity to work itself out in practice before we start making rules. Otherwise, we'll twist ourselves in knots, and I'm not willing to read the 40,000 court cases that, might be implicated in that. So I think, we don't need EC. If we have EC, fine, it's gonna be one angle, but I think if we don't have EC, we will function the way we have always functioned, and we can, in fact, it makes the most sense to wait for any further guidance in the first instance from the legislature or from the Committee on Open Government, because, they should be thinking about this in the broadest way, not just community board by community board. So I don't think we need to do anything at any meeting this year with regard to the ADA. And I think Marty's number 1 and number 3 are the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Julie?
I'm just concerned that, frankly, there are 2 individuals who we know and love, or loved, that we wouldn't want to freeze out. And they really had not been able to attend for the last several months. That's all. Again, we don't need to get into those details tonight, but it's just something to think about in the coming months.
Julie?
You may not have taken
I don't know how to take my hands out. I'm sorry. It's star. Artie, can you take it down for me?
Done. Okay, so
Thank
it is
you.
now April. We will meet in May, at least before the board meeting. If we have any changes to make at that time, we have a chance to put it into the hopper.
But the overarching, if I may, the overarching issue that Rosemary raised is, do we just simply follow through on the committee's recommendation, present it to the board? If it turns out that the system is renewed, we've taken action and we're prompt. And if it turns out that after July 2nd or whatever the date is, the system is not renewed, no harm, no foul. That's not an inefficient way to proceed necessarily.
Well, I need to announce that tomorrow night, and based on the conversation here, I will tell them that May, both of the resolutions come up for renewal, and we recommend non-renewal of the procedures. Having said that, I don't know that 2 of us need to talk about these wonderful people who are so stupid as to violate. There's a new one which I hadn't sent out, which I will when I get home. Again, examples of people who should have known better and don't understand why they didn't know better. Spreadsheet was sent out. Is there any old business or new business? The next meeting is Monday, May 13th. I would hope we have a quorum at that time. I hope everyone didn't look at the sun and they're outside is fine come tomorrow morning. And I thank you all for attending one way or another. The motion, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Make sure you stop the recording, Marty.
Thanks, folks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
David.
Thank you.
Is
That one.
stop.
Click on yes.
Right here.